So I'm here today with Steve Berk. Steve, could you just tell me about yourself?
Sure, Zach. My name is Steve Berk. I'm an attorney here in Washington, D.C. I've practiced a little over 20 years. I've had the privilege of having jobs in all types of law. I started my career in the government. I worked for the Department of Justice as a federal prosecutor. I tried cases, mostly criminal cases. I worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission. I also worked at a large law firm where I was a partner for a long time, and I now have my own small practice.
Could you tell me about your experience with class action litigation in particular?
Sure. My first class action experience was about 7 or 8 years ago when I represented a class of individuals who were residents of public housing down in Florida. Since then, I've represented individuals who have purchased inkjet printers, automobiles, marine engines, insurance products, users of telephone services. I've been involved in litigation against some of the largest companies in the country, from Hewlett Packard and Sony to Verizon and General Motors.
So why class actions?
Well, it's a good question. As you probably know, our legal system is very expensive. Lawyers charge upwards of $800 or $900 an hour now. So if Warren Buffett or Bill Gates have a problem, they can hire a lawyer. But oftentimes average citizens can't afford to go through the legal system alone. And so what they need to do is put their claims together into one case. And if they put it together into one case, it can be tried and litigated efficiently. And so that's the reason why the federal rules of civil procedure allow for class action litigation.
Okay, so class action is efficient, but a lot of people complain, and I hear quite often that it's the lawyers that get all the money, and then the class is left with nothing. Is there any truth to that?
Well, look, Zach, like anything else, there's a little truth to it. There are some bad examples of class action litigation. There's examples where the lawyers make a disproportionate amount of money. But I can tell you that that's the exception, not the rule. It's very much a small percentage. In most cases, the lawyers get a small part of the settlement or a small portion of the settlement, and the individual clients do very well.
Are you familiar with any examples?
Well, you know, I guess I'd go back to one of my own cases, a recent case that I had against Honda, where people were complaining about their brakes and that their brakes were wearing out very quickly, which obviously, as you know, is a problematic thing when you're driving a car and not having brakes. We were able to negotiate a settlement with Honda. Took a long time. It was very complex. We had to learn a lot about the technology. But at the end of the day, the individuals were able to receive close to $300 each, and there were 750,000 of them. They both got reimbursements for monies they had paid Honda, and they were going to get monies going forward to fix their brakes so that they had new brake systems. In that case, I think the lawyer's fees will be less than 2% of the total amount of relief to the class. So I think that that's more of a typical example of what lawyers get, and not one that is bantied around the press as being something where the lawyers get all the money.
Are there any checks in place to ensure these types of settlements? Obviously, the public doesn't always just trust that lawyers are honest and hardworking like people in this past case.
Yeah, no, you know, again, it's a fair question. I think lawyers have gotten a bad name over the last couple of years. We're sort of judged by the greediest among us and not by the noblest among us. But there are important checks in place. I mean, the first check is going to a lawyer that's reputable, somebody that's credible and has experience. But more to the point, the judges are in check. The judge has to approve the settlement, and that judge oftentimes, if not always, is approved by the Senate, nominated by the President of the United States. And also, under new legislation, fairly new legislation, each settlement is sent, before it's approved, to each Attorney General in the United States, all 50 of them. And those Attorney Generals have the opportunity to comment on a settlement and object to the settlement if it's not fair. So with those checks in place, I think that most of the time we get it right.
So how does the class action suit get started?
Well, there's different ways. There's not really one way. Sometimes it is lawyers looking for cases, advertising for cases, seeing that there's wrongs out there that need to be addressed. But more often than not, the majority of cases are started by individuals, people who have been harmed by some practice, whether it be ripped off by a car dealer or by their telephone company or an insurance company or buying a product that's defective. And those individuals, in our day and age, the internet age, they'll oftentimes go on the internet and find like-minded people and talk about that, and eventually critical mass will occur, and they'll bring class action litigation, or at least come to lawyers seeking class action litigation.
So what is a class representative?
Well, a class representative is a plaintiff, and the plaintiff is the person bringing the lawsuit, whereas the defendant is the individual or corporation defending the lawsuit. But what makes a class representative different is not only are they a plaintiff, meaning they're bringing the action, but they're acting on behalf of the entire class. So in some ways it's an enormous responsibility. There might be 2 or 3 people representing a class of 200 or 300,000. But they have sort of the dual loyalty, both to themselves as a plaintiff and then also to the entire class.
And are these folks, are they incentivized at all by the system?
They are. I think they're incentivized sort of in 3 ways. One is that, they feel good about being able to represent an entire class and not just acting for themselves. 2, they receive relief. If they had brakes that didn't work, they'll get new brakes and they'll get reimbursed for any money's put out. And thirdly, and it's oftentimes not the most important reason, but the court will provide them with what's called an incentive award or a bonus on top of what the class receives. It's never a guaranteed amount of money, but it's something to compensate them for the time and energy they put into the case.
All right, well, thanks for clearing all that up.